City University Television presents the American Theater Wing Seminars. Working in the theater. This seminar, performance.
A very warm welcome to the American Theater Wing Seminar on Working in the Theater. I'm Isabel Stevenson. I'm president of the American Theater Wing. And once again, we are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. These seminars offer a rare opportunity to hear discussions of the realities of working in the theater, from an extraordinary list of performers, producers, playwrights, designers, casting directors, press agents, unions, and guild leaders, all the people that make up working in the theater. And since the wing first introduced these seminars some 25 years ago, there have been over 1,000 of Broadway and off-Broadway's best which have come to these seminars as our guests. The wing is the founder of the Tony Awards, which are given each year for distinguished achievement in the theater. However, as many of you know, we are much, much more. For example, our year-round programs are dedicated to serving the community and the theater. We honor excellence in the theater, and we help to develop new audiences as well, discriminating audiences. And to do this, we have created an audience development program for students in public high schools. Our introduction to Broadway has begun 7 years ago and has enabled some 70,000 New York students to attend a Broadway show, many of them for the very first time. They are able to meet and question the cast. And the majority of these students, not only is it the first time in the theater, but it's the first time on Broadway as well. And then there's our newest program, Theater in Schools. Theater professionals, like those you will meet today, go directly into classrooms to work with and talk to students, to talk about working in the theater. What is ahead for them as they enter the world of theater? And of course, then, there's the Wing's legendary hospital program, which dates back to World War II and which goes into, from the stage door canteen to having performers go from Broadway, off-Broadway, and the cabaret world. They entertain, have entertained more than 75,000 patients in nursing homes, hospitals, children's wards, and AIDS centers. We bring the magic of theater to those that cannot get to the theater itself. We are indeed proud of our history, the work we do, and we are happy to have a wonderful working theater relationship with the theatrical community, and are grateful to everyone who makes what the theater wing does very well and helps to make it possible. We hope that you will enjoy and learn from today's seminar. And now, I would like to introduce you to our performance panel. Reading from our left is Brian Stokes Mitchell, Natasha Richardson, and Blythe Danner on the right, and Alfred Molina, and I skipped John Vickery, who was before Blythe Danner, Alfred Molina, and Edward Herrmann. And now I would like to introduce our co-moderators, Dasha Epstein, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the American Theater Wing, has produced both on and off Broadway. Jim Dale, who is actor and has been on Broadway off-Broadway, off-Broadway, and London as well. And I think that these two are quite capable of keeping this wonderful cast of players on the line to tell you what it is to work in the theater. Let us welcome them. Dasha.
Well, I have to stay on my toes, Isabel, because I'm surrounded by actors, and being a producer, I've got to get in here, too. But however, I'm happy to be here. Jimmy, I'm glad you're with me. You memorized your lines. I'm going to read some of them. The first question, which I'd like to hand to you, is sort of a triple header. And I'd like to ask each of you briefly to tell me, how did you start in the theater? What was your schooling? And what was your first professional job? And can we go around quickly?
Yes, it was process of elimination in college. The last 2 years in college I did concentrated in drama. I went to a repertory company in Dallas, the Dallas Theater Center, rather than Yale. It seemed like a more interesting program at the time. This is way back in '65. From there, I suppose my first professional job was as a pirate in Peter Pan with a yarn wig. This was without an equity card, but in New York, it was when I finally got to New York in 1970, after having gone to Lambda as well, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. It was a part in Arsenic and Old Lace down at Ford's Theater. It was run by Circle in the Square at the time, and that's how I sort of slid into it. I had about 5 years before I came to New York doing repertory and training.
Well, after seeing Edward in his yarn wig, I decided to become an actor. No, I trained in London at the Guildhall School, and then when that finished, I was a stand-up. I did some stand-up comedy work on my own and as part of a double act for about 2 years, and we weren't very good. And then my first sort of proper acting job, I was the back end of a tiger in a children's theatre company. So I spent a year doing that.
Thank you.
And it's been downhill ever since.
That's all?
That's all I did.
Blythe?
I have to talk quickly. Let's see. Well, I grew up in a family that sang all the time. My first memory was Hansel and Gretel, the entirety, in my high chair. My mother, that's where the interest came, I suppose. Then I was an exchange student in Berlin the year the wall was built, back in the Dark Ages. And I joined this little group at the America Club that performed musicals. And people were fleeing by the thousands, which is why they built the wall, of course. And they'd come to America House, and they'd come with whatever they could escape with, which was usually, if anything bigger than a bread box, they were suspected of fleeing and pulled off the train. They came through Checkpoint Charlie. And I would just get on the train and watch their reactions, and I'd go back and forth. Then they'd come to the America House, and we were up there singing inane things like "I'm Just Wild About Harry," and these people sitting in the audience having just escaped with their lives, sitting there either laughing or usually sobbing, probably because we were
at the
so
entertainment.
bad. But they just escaped with their lives, and we were astonished with. It was just such a surreal experience and an astonishing experience that I suppose that's sort of what. It was a very dramatic thing that happened and drew me to it. Then I went to Bard College, had a wonderful group of drama teachers there. And I got my equity card playing Laura in the Glass Menagerie at the Fishkill Theater, and then spent many, many years at the Williamstown Theater Festival. That's about it.
Thank you.
I got into this profession completely by accident. I was drafted by my English teacher in high school. I went to a very small high school in Berkeley, California, and they didn't have many people to choose from. My first role was Sir Toby Belch with a pillow stuffed down my pants. I actually trained to be a mathematician. Alfred wasn't a very good stand-up comedian, and I wasn't a very good mathematician, so somehow I stumbled into this because I always had fun doing it. So I decided to take it seriously. And after I got out of college with my bachelor's degree in mathematics, I actually, a couple of years later, went to England and studied at a place called the Drama Studio, which is right across the street from the old Ealing Film Studios. My first professional role was Laertes in Hamlet, or as I like to call him, Lurtz.
Lurtz.
Thank you. And I guess I should go to Jim now, since you're not only a moderator, but how did you start?
Oh, I started as an impressionist when I was about 16. I did ballet and tap for 6 years, and then I went to an audition at a musical theatre. And I walked on the stage, and I tripped over the curtain as I walked on, and I fell flat on my face. And I did my impressions, and the man said, those weren't very good impressions. I said, well, I think they're very good. He said, but none of us know who your mother's butcher is. Or the rent man. I said, yes, but they do in the town that I come from. And he said, but they were terrible impressions, but the fall you did when you came on, that was very, very good. Get an act where you fall over. I went back that night with a tumbling act, and that was my break into show business. He saw it, and it got a laugh, and he asked me to join the show, and I stayed with him for about 2 years. That was my entry into show business. Knockabout comic.
Natasha?
I trained at the Central School in London for 3 years, and at the end of my time there, I auditioned for various reps, and I got into the Leeds Playhouse and to play sort of ingenue parts in 2 productions. And I remember being quite surprised because it was the first time that I'd ever had to play anyone my own age, because at drama school you always had to play someone. It was always the older women roles that I got cast in, so I didn't know really how to play anyone who was 18, and so that's how I started.
I started out in San Diego, California. I went to a place when I was 14 years old. There was a place, it was like a high school of performing arts, kind of. It was called San Diego Junior Theater at the time. I'm not even sure that it's really around in its form anymore. And outside of that, I studied acting, singing, dancing with private teachers, whoever I could get my hands on down there, and ended up working in pretty much any theater in San Diego that I could. And my first professional job was with the old Globe Theater in a production of Godspell that they had there. And I got my equity card through a company called the 12th Night Repertory Company that at that time was in San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And I thought, there's a great opportunity to get a card and to later move up to Los Angeles, which is what I ended up doing.
Good. Okay, there's one question that last time I was on the panel, they asked me, and I thought I'd throw this at you. It's how much preparation do you do, each of you, in readiness for the role? Lots of people do turn up for that first day at the reading very well prepared. Laurence Olivier turned up for The Merchant of Venice and with no script. And we sat around the table, and as we read the roles, it said, enter Shylock, and he proceeded to stand up and do a complete performance of Shylock, which he had prepared for the last year. Now, that's going to some extreme, but he's Laurence Olivier. General question then, what sort of preparation do you do? Is it necessary to do any at all? Do you have to leave yourself wide open for what the director is going to suggest in those early days? Or do you come to that first day's read-through with some idea in your head or no idea? How do you begin? Blythe.
Oh,
you were looking at me. That's
I don't have my glasses on, so I'm not sure.
Borrow mine.
See you. Is that you?
That's me.
That's Jim there.
Jim.
In the green.
Well, lots of reading. You know, right now we're working. Edward and I are working in the Deep Blue Sea. So I read the Vatican biography, and there's lots of emotional stuff and this very rich stuff. So I try to leave myself as open as possible, but also to do as much preparation as possible, and mostly reading. And I must admit, I snuck a look at the BBC production that they did in London a few years ago, which was very helpful. When I was a young actor, I never would deign to do such a thing. I thought I was a purist. I had to come all, from my own complete preparation. But as I've gotten older, I've thought, why not steal from the best? So every so often, if there's something, a wonderful piece, and Penelope Wilton was very generous in talking to me on the phone, who played it recently in London when they did it at the Almeida, and then it moved to the West End, and suggested certain cuts that we also implemented, and was wonderfully generous, so that was a big help. Got a lot of preparation from her.
Since we're fortunate to have you both here, could you be specific and talk about how you prepared for Deep Blue Sea, both you and Ed? Did you both come together? Did you both know that you were going to be in it? Was one cast before the other?
I don't know how it actually worked. Neither of us did the reading at the Roundabout. They called me about it, and then we were working on a television film together. Mm-hmm. And you were in the same breath. I thought, this is great. Why haven't they contacted you? And you said the same thing, and they did. I mean, like the next day or something like that. So we knew we were going to do it. I think we prepared differently. Generally speaking, if I know I'm going to do a play, I'll read about the period if I don't know about it, and immerse myself. This is Radigan. This is 1951 in England at a particular time in a particular place, and it's a particular world. But generally, I like to walk in with a tabula rasa. I'd like to start from scratch with the play. Even obviously, you read the plays quite a few times and get an idea of what you think this is about. But you want the rehearsals to sort of generate and percolate and get stuff going in rehearsal, because you can discover things in rehearsal that you didn't expect. And if it's not, I've found it not so wise to make up your mind exactly how you want to play it before you get in. Unless you have a 2-week rehearsal period and you're doing King Lear, you better know exactly what you're going to do and do it beforehand, and then come on and just arrange people on stage.
Yeah, there must be some, in your case, John, I mean, when you turn up for the rehearsal of The Lion King, did you have any preconceived idea of what you were going to see?
Well,
or did it all come as a shock?
It was a long sort of slowly immersing myself in it, because I was involved in a workshop in the summer of '96, which was mostly music and the book, and then another workshop in the winter of '96 that was had to do with just the puppets. Mm-hmm. And having done the puppet workshop, I realized what a physically daunting this role was going to be. So lazy person that I am, I actually did start going to a gym and using a trainer and all those sorts of things that I wouldn't ordinarily do for the preparation of a play, because it's just so physically demanding.
People don't realize how physical it is, 8 times a week. You know, boy, that can really knock.
Well, I'm wearing 25 to 30 pounds of costume, and I have strap marks permanently from the suspenders that I'm wearing that's holding it all up. When I take my shirt off, I look as if I'm into bondage, which I'm not.
You didn't have to qualify.
Only for your sake did I qualify that.
Okay, Natasha.
Preparation in general, or
let's say just for this
Cabaret?
particular role in Cabaret.
Well, for Cabaret, well, actually, somebody came back to my dressing room the other night and said, "How did you prepare for this?" And an old friend said she's been preparing for this role her whole life. And,
I can believe that.
And in a way, I have. I grew up on the record of Cabaret, of the movie of Cabaret. And I was too young when the movie came out to see it, but then I caught up with it later on TV, and I just loved it, and I loved Liza Minnelli in it, and we would put on little shows as kids, and I would, put on stockings and try and do the whole cabaret bit. And unfortunately, as we know, singing it with friends and in your bathtub is not the same as singing it on a stage. And when the opportunity came for me to do this, I realized how much work I'd have to do, an enormous amount of work, particularly vocally, because I'm not a singer, I'm not a trained singer. I've had some singing experience, but it's not the same as being a singer. So I really set to work working with a couple of terrific voice coaches, and this is like a couple of months in advance of starting rehearsals.
Was this before Sam came into the picture, or was Sam there saying, this is the way, this is the direction we're going to go, this is perhaps focus on what I'd like to see in it? Did that?
No, I mean, I knew what, I sort of took the singing preparation on myself, but I knew what, I mean, Sam and I, actually I will tell an interesting story. Sam and I met and we discussed the whole approach to the production and how it was going to be. And I arrogantly said, well, I'd love to do it if you'd put maybe this time in the song from the movie. And he said, well, I'd love to put it in the show. And I said, and I'm sure I can sing it. And then I started to work and realized actually I couldn't sing it, and I couldn't sing it at all. And it took me a very long time to be able to do that, and I nearly had to backtrack and say, take it out, I was wrong, because I can't sing it.
But you sell it. That's more important.
But, well, what I was going to say, I'm sort of rambling on a bit, but is that if I'd had to audition for this part, I wouldn't have got it, because when we actually came to start rehearsals in December, I think, John Kander, who'd had difficult experiences with past Sally Bowles's vocal abilities, got nervous and said he wanted me to come and sing for him. And so I went along to his place, and I had the flu, and I had not worked on it at all, and I didn't know the songs really. And they said, okay, we'll just start singing the songs. I started to sing, and there was this kind of deathly silence in the room. And I thought, oh, I don't think this feels good at all. They're not exactly jumping up and down with joy. And finally we got to Mine Hair, and everybody kind of sat up a little, and they said, oh, well, how come you sing that song like that? And I said, because I know this song, and so I feel confident to sing it, because I know it. And then they all felt good and pleased, but all I know is that had it been an audition, I sang 4 songs before we got to Mine Hair, and after one song they would have said, thank you very much, on to the next.
All right, Brian.
Specifically on this show, the great thing about it is
What show?
on Ragtime.
Oh,
Ragtime, of course.
I had a book to work from, and that, I think, is, if you ever have that opportunity, is the best place to go, because there's, of course, so much more information in a book than you'll ever see on stage, and you also get into the heads of people. Also, I was reading whatever I could on the time. Also, it wasn't a time that I was incredibly familiar with. And so I read books on Booker T. Washington, on W.E.B. Du Bois, who was kind of Booker T's Malcolm X at the time to Booker T. Washington's Martin Luther King. Any books on the period. I think you kind of, when you're doing a period piece, you have to kind of perform a sort of subtractive consciousness. There's so much that we know now through just having television and the media that is available to us that people didn't know back then. It was kind of a less familiar time. People were less familiar with each other. So part of it was trying to understand the consciousness in the head of the people. The character of Coalhouse Walker is based on a Van Kleist novella called Michael Kohlhaas, and Doctorow, in homage to him, named the character Coalhouse, which is a story that takes place in Dresden and in the 1600s, I think it is, about a horse trader doing the same thing. He wants justice, and Martin Luther is the intermediary instead. So whatever I could get my hands on. Also, I had the advantage of having Edgar Doctorow around, so if I ever needed to ask him any questions, we were able to do that. And Frank Galati is this wonderfully collaborative director, and he makes material available to you and loves loves for actors to discover and to bring things into the rehearsal also. So it was a really great experience.
When did you know that you had the part?
I actually was very
How much time beforehand?
fortunate. I was doing Kiss of the Spider Woman before that, and about 2 months, I did a 1.5 year run on that show, and about 2 months into that run, Garth Drabinsky came up to me and said, I got a role, I want you to do it. It's yours if you want. Can't tell you what it is. And I said, well, okay, well, let me know. And every few months he would keep coming back to me and saying, it's still yours, still can't tell you what it is. And I think he was trying to get the rights for it at that point. And finally, about 4 months later, he said, all right, it's Coalhouse, it's Ragtime, we're doing a workshop in about 6 months, it's yours. So I said, great. And so I was in from the very beginning of the process, which was especially nice, because you can really add what you want to into the...
You get all the richness out of it.
Yes.
Sure.
I have a question that sort of goes with this.
Oh, we left
We left you out.
It's not, it's
It's
okay.
okay. I've been having a wonderful time. Well, it's interesting, this thing about preparation, because I've got no no kind of routine or anything like that. I think I've always thought preparation, any kind of prep, is like a mixture of sort of detective work and a kind of general sort of bathing in kind of any information that you can get. Like Ed says about reading about the period, if it's a period piece, but if you're doing a play that's a completely new, brand new piece of work, and you're the first person to play that role, then there's a different kind of prep required, which is much more to do with invention and leaving yourself as blank as possible in a way, and letting anything from in the rehearsals to come in and inform what you do. And it's interesting how we've got quite a range of different plays that we're all, in a sense, representing here. You know, period pieces, historical stuff, you know, and in my case, a brand new play. And it's odd that with art, the three of us, our prep consists, because the play is essentially about a friendship between three men, our prep seemed to be to do with the three actors just getting to know each other and spending time with each other. And so our you know, it was actually delightful. Our preparation for 4 weeks of rehearsal was we would rehearse all day, then go and have dinner in the evening. And it was actually we found ourselves kind of taking on making assumptions about our roles and playing those roles with each other, sort of in private, as it were. And that process still goes on every night. We meet up about half an hour before the show, and we just sit in the green room and just talk. We just chat about what we've been doing during the day. But it's interesting how we kind of position ourselves into where we're going to be for the next hour and a half on stage. Yeah.
Do you do that at each performance?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not like a formal thing. It's not like,
No,
let's
I
get together
understand.
now
No, I
and be
understand
spontaneous.
But there is a feeling that you've got to get together.
Yeah, it just kind of happens. You know, but that's because but if we were doing like a historical drama or something where we would, you know, I think the process would be very, very different.
I think every show has a different kind of preparation. If I was doing Shakespeare, I would be doing a lot of reading. I don't think there's a lot of reading I can do about the Lion King. Go to the zoo,
art being
look
such a
at pictures
popular
of lions.
with art being such a popular play and starting in Paris and then going on to London and having success in both places, did you see the play and the acting there, or did you take your own interpretation of the role, or how did that affect you?
I went to, I saw the original cast in London just before I knew that I was going to be doing it on Broadway. I saw, I think, the third cast after I knew I was going to be doing it here. I'm a great believer in, as Blythe was saying, I'm a great believer in stealing. I would tell I do some teaching now, and I tell all my students that stealing from the best is an honourable thing to do. If you borrow, that's just what mediocre actors do. Steal. Be brazen about it, because the chances are any idea you come up with, someone else came up with it before. And so I stole shamelessly. I went to see these three wonderful, wonderful actors give these fantastic performances, and I just took as much as I could stuff into my bag and back with me. I'm shameless about it.
But then you make it your own.
Not necessarily.
It comes through your instrument, so it has to come out.
If anyone says, "Oh, didn't I see Albert Finney do that?" I say, "Yes, it's an homage." You've always got a perfect cover.
With regard to one thing that we all go through, I hope you all go through it, which is forgetting lines occasionally. As a young man, I did my first musical, and I was supposed to leap on the stage and say to the villain, "Why in tarnation, you low-down varmint, strike my poor little half with his sister Agnes," and then 2 or 3 more minutes of this. Then he would slink off. My sister would run on and say, "You certainly told him. I've been waiting to hear those words from your mouth for many a year." Right. This particular night, I leaped on, and I said, "Get out." And there was a long pause. He said, "Don't you want to tell me something?" And I said, "No." "Get out." He said, "Not even good luck?" I said, "No." He and my sister jumped on the stage and said, "You certainly intended to tell him. It was one of those embarrassing moments ever of forgetting lines. Now, I hope to God I'm not the only one. There must be other instances, so come on, let's hear it.
I've been really fortunate in that.
Oh,
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I
Never
generally-
missed an entrance, never dropped
I generally forget. Lines of music will drop out of my... The other day I was singing
This is
Make
what I'm
Them
saying.
Hear You, and the word didn't come out at all.
Good.
I had no idea where it was, and when it was coming up, I was thinking, I have no idea what this word is, and I'm singing the song. Okay, what's this word? Okay, I'll just not sing it. And I dropped the word and just went on with the song, and you hope nobody knows, you know, and the old trick now with the microphones that everybody has is that always works, is if you forget a line, and then you get back to it when you remember where you are, and everybody thinks it's the sound system, especially if you act like actors.
Shameless. Yes.
Blame it on the sound man. Natasha. Any big whoops?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But for a while, actually, when I was doing the show in Los Angeles, I've never, ever had this happen before. But for about a week, I had these huge anxiety attacks. I start the second act with a soliloquy number, and I remember for about 4 performances, I'm standing on the steps going, I have no idea what I'm supposed to sing. I have no idea what the words are. And nobody's around me. I can't ask anybody. And you just go into this panic mode. And that's, of course, the worst thing that you can possibly do. So you try to breathe, and you trust that it's in your body. I'd already done 400 or 500 performances of the show. And you just trust that it's in your body, and you get out there and just kind of, I just do the tabula rasa kind of thing with my head. Okay, blank slate, I don't even know who I am. And something just happens, and it comes out. But that's and I hope somebody else has stories about that.
How do you know what to do? How do you know about calling on what you're calling on to give you those words? Is that part of experience? Is it anything that you can learn? What is it? Where do you get this that gets you over this?
Oh, I don't think there's any other choice in that particular case. I don't know. It's just a trust in your material and a trust in yourself that you've done it enough times that if you just get out of the way, and I think that is such an important thing really generally in a performance, if you get out of the way of the character and get out of the way of the material and get out of the way of it, I find the panic attacks were coming in when I was thinking too hard. And when I just went back to the script. And I just started studying the script and saying, yeah, I know that, I understand that, I'm not going to worry. But if you get out of the way, your body knows what to do, and I think that's the best way.
Natasha, do you think it's a stress that comes into it? That there are times when you're on that stage stressed out after lots of rehearsals, and that's the time when your mind just blanks over for a few minutes?
I think it can be. I actually think it can be because you're completely in the moment. You're so there that suddenly, and it's because something new happens, that it can throw you right out just for a second. I don't really have any interesting, good stories
you
like
will
that.
have.
I have only in the sense that in this, I mean, when you're an actor and you blank on a line, and you can usually pick it up, or another actor helps you out,
Yes.
or you just skip on to the next.
But it's when you call out, finally in desperation, you call out cue, and somebody says a line back, and you say, no, that's not it.
Yes.
Then you're in trouble. Yeah.
I just not had the
Blythe, have you ever had that?
all the time.
Oh, good.
It's the rule rather than the exception, although I think in my old age I'm getting a little better. When I was playing Blanche, and Chris Walken was Stanley and Sigourney Weaver was Stella, we were Williamstown. And it was just an easy word like big or huge, something like what huge lungs you have, she says to Jimmy Naughton, who was playing the gentleman caller. I could not think of huge for the life of me. So I go, what? Voluminous lungs you have. And the entire poker table over on the other range just all went, and then, so it took a few minutes to recover. I always make it more complicated. I don't know why.
See, by this time, everybody in the cast knows your lines, so it just needs to blow one line, and it sends everybody into fits and laughter. John?
Well, I've had my share of flubs. I think they usually happen to me when I do that thing you're never supposed to do, which is congratulate myself on how well I'm doing. Actually, and it's like a bolt of lightning from God immediately.
But Alfred, you don't have this problem. You just
Oh, yeah,
improvise.
I think any actor that says, you know, oh no, we all have panics in some. Forgetting your lines, I think, is just one manifestation of a panic. I mean, there's all kinds of other things that happen as well. Like you find yourself suddenly playing a moment or playing a line, or changing the timing of something to such a radical degree that it might make someone else forget their lines. Suddenly you get this kind of, like a brainstorm sort of happens, you know, and I think it's just, I think it's something to do with what Natasha was saying about you're so completely into what you're doing that something, you know, no actor, I don't think, ever forgets that he or she is actually on a stage. You never get so lost that you think you're in your front room. You know there's an audience there. There's always there's an assumption. We enter a contract. We have a deal with the audience. So there's always one element that outside of you that's kind of in control. But sometimes you just get lost. I've been lost. For instance, I've forgotten on occasion the name of the character that I'm talking to, and I may have a line where I have to call that person by name. I once did a small part when I was carrying a spear at the Royal Shakespeare Company years ago. I had one line. I played the smallest character in Troilus and Cressida, a character called Margarelon, who comes in and has to say, "Turn, slave, and fight." And then Thersites says, "What art thou?" And he says, "Margarelon, bastard son of Priam." And that's the role. And did a lot of prep for that.
Yes, indeed.
and I came on, and I had to come and rush on stage. I had to say, "Turn, slave, and fight!" And Thersites turns around and says, "What art thou?" And I couldn't remember my name. And I said, "Bastard son of Priam." And the actor went, "Ah, you must be Margarelon."
Good.
And then we carried on. But you know, like 2 lines, and I forget one of them.
Half your part.
Half my part.
You have a very, very long monologue, which is so important in art. What happens there? You're on your own completely.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, there's what's happened with that. There's been, I shouldn't be saying this really, but anyway, what the hell? I haven't forgotten lines in the monologue. What I have done is I've forgotten whole sections of it. Like, there's a point in the speech where I say a line like, "Mother, I have friends waiting for me." And at one point the line is, "Mother, I have friends waiting for me. We'll talk about this tomorrow." The second time I say it, I just say, "Mother, I have friends waiting." And I got those 2 connecting moments mixed up, and I jumped to the second one, and I missed out like a whole chunk of the speech in the middle. And then when I got to the end of the speech, I started racking my brain, thinking, have I left out any important information? Which I had. So I then tacked it onto the end, which made a complete mishmash of the whole thing. And it was terrible. You get this kind of cold sweat starts running down.
And the 2 actors then took up.
They didn't help me at all.
Yeah,
they just held up the sign saying you're on your own.
It sounds like what
I
happened.
think Shakespeare seems to be the best place for some of the best ones. The one I remember the most didn't happen to me, but I was on stage, and since there's so many Brits here, it's in the Scottish play. I was on stage as Malcolm, and the fellow playing Macduff, who has the line, which I think can be a very effective line, but it's an odd line, "All my pretty chickens in one fell swoop." And one night, for some reason, he started out with "all my shitty prickins." And he sort of paused and looked as if, you know, he knew he had done something. He was also holding his hat at that time, because somebody says, you know, don't put your hat in front of your face. He said, "all my shitty prickins." And he sort of looked off in his face and said, "in one swell poop." And the rest of us just turned up stage, and all you saw was his shoulders. It happens all the time in Shakespeare.
Well, it also happens in contemporary play. I did a play called A Walk in the Woods, which the premise of which doesn't exist any longer, this long negotiation with the Soviets. And I was lucky enough to do it with Sir Alec Guinness in London, and we were 7 months at this. Now, this is a play that has some wonderful writing in it, but not a lot of subtext, so if you get lost, you don't know where you are. You can't make up the words, because each exchange is very much like the one that went before. So Alec had this way of getting up, before you could feed him a line, he'd get the glazed look in his eye, and then he would just walk off stage. And I'm standing out there, you know, like holding my little ball bearings and saying just, well, okay. And he would go off very slowly and then walk very slowly back on. And he said, don't worry, they don't know. They really, and I had a friend who, a wise theatrical person, came to see a lot of plays, and he saw one of these flubs happen, and he left the stage and came on. And I said, I'm sorry about the flub. He said, what flub? Well, he left. Well, you're walking all over the stage, so it doesn't really matter. But the same play, about 5 months in, I also went up. And he, of course, didn't, he just looked at me with this plan, shot his cuffs and said, well, you know, you're on your own. So I decided, well, I'll walk off stage. So I walked off stage. And the stage manager was back there, and she was kind of bored, and she was totally lost. She was not paying attention to the script. So I had no idea, and she had, oh Christ, I said, where is it? And Alec is sitting there, then he pretends to hear something, and I look out of the corner of my eye, and he's dancing around the stage in the trees, listening for spies or something, to sort of cover this huge hole. When we finally found the line, I went back on stage. I thought, yeah, they'll see that one. They didn't miss that one. But there's nothing quite worse than losing your complete place in the play and not know how to get back into it, because this is a play that's constructed sort of cyclically, and you can't, it's like losing that in the
But I
middle of your
think
speech and
that's
then trying
what
to
a
tap it.
professional does, and that's why I asked the question. You were able to get over it and continue it so that the audience is not
Well, it was a
really
radical
over
way
it.
of getting over it, just walking off the stage and saying the line, and then
Not over.
walking back on. But there's some places, sometimes there's nothing else to do.
In Shakespeare, there is the all-purpose line, I am amazed, my lord, and know not what to say.
Right, exactly.
That's very interesting.
That's a good one. What do you consider your biggest break in the theater? Blythe, do you want to start that one?
Well, my very first Broadway show, I'd just come in as a kid, got lucky and got this role, Butterflies Are Free, and that's the biggest success I've ever had. Many years ago.
What is success? What do you consider?
Success,
what do you consider success?
Success is doing it and delving deeper every night, and I'm so in love with the character I'm playing now. You said you always know the audience is there, and I've never had this happen before, where I actually forget I'm on stage, and it's a little terrifying. I've never had that experience. She's on the brink of committing suicide, sort of throughout the entire play, and
We worry about her every night.
yes, yeah, and I guess it's about obsession with love, of being obsessed, and I think there's a sort of a communal thing that happens with the audience. I've never quite had that experience before, where you feel that everyone in the audience has been through this in some way in their life, and there's a great feeling
Giving back.
of empathy.
Yeah, there's a great giving back.
Yes. And it's really a wonderful experience. So, to me, it's just becoming one with the character and having this great journey every night. The play sort of washes over you and takes you along. And I think when that happens, it's just a dream come true. For that, to me, is success. You know, whether.
Natasha, you were talking before about the passion that you felt about doing Sally Bowles and Cabaret. Is there another role that you would like to do more than any other?
Not really.
I felt inside.
I think one day I would like to have a crack at Blanche Dubois, but I can't really think of another part that has that feeling.
You'll probably be marvelous at whatever you choose, because you're so great in Cabaret. Alfred, is there anyone that you...
There used to be. I used to have, when I was much younger, I had this list of roles. I thought, you know, by the time I'm 25, I want to play this. By the time I'm 30, I want to do that. And as I'm getting older, most of them I haven't played. And I'm now sort of now I kind of, there's a couple. I mean, before I get too old, I'd like to maybe have a go at Benedict, maybe, and, yeah, things like that. But not really in order to kind of to sort of become just to do it because it's a part that I'd love to do. But this thing about the thing about the success and like big breaks, I always, at the risk of sounding slightly Pollyanna-ish, the biggest thrill I ever got as an actor was at the end of one particular year when I suddenly realised that I'd actually, for the first time in my life, I'd actually started making a living as an actor. I was actually, that was the first year I actually didn't have to go off and do something else to pay the rent. I'd actually earned enough money that year to actually say, yes, this is how I earn my living. And I've never quite gotten over that. That was like the most thrilling thing.
That's a very important goal.
Yeah.
Suddenly.
You know, there is
Only happened that year, though.
there is a thing that all of you have. Some people call it presence, others call it wobby, others call it magic, others call it... it was Ruth Gordon who came backstage one night, and I said, congratulations on everything, you know, I love you. And she said, she pulled her dress up, and I said, what are you doing? And there was her bare belly there. I said, please, Miss Gordon, what are you doing? She said, feel that. I said, why? She said, just feel it. I said, oh, yes, you're very fit. She said, that ain't muscle, kid. That's confidence. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know what it is. I mean, is it magic? Is it wobby? Is it presence? Is it confidence? But what is it that all of you have, that you know that you have? And when do you think you acquired it? That confidence came to you, Alfred, you just said, on that first year. You had a confidence that you knew you could go out there and earn money. But there's more of a confidence that I'm talking about now. There's the confidence of knowing who you are. And when did all of you acquire that? Can you remember that, Natasha? When you had that?
To me, it's not like something you have and it's there. It's something that
comes and goes. It stopped you from running away to do something else. That's
well, that's a different thing. I think for me, it's just that it's inconceivable to do anything else. It's a vocation. It's not confidence. I think Ralph Richardson said that every time, the difficulty about being an actor is it's like you're given this lump of gold and you have to fashion a beautiful brooch when you make a part, when you play a character, but the unfortunate thing is every time it gets melted down and you have to start all over again. And that's how I feel. I think that magic thing is very ephemeral, and that confidence thing, and there are moments when you feel it and you feel there's nothing you can do, and then the next day you can feel, I can't do a damn thing and I can't do it at all. So I think it's...
But then something happens again, doesn't it? After you lose that confidence.
Yes, but it's work. It's work.
You get it through working hard.
And is the director very much a part of that process? That when you are feeling a role...
Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes, true. But how does the liaison between your interpretation of the role and the director's interpretation of the role help to mold that or not cement it? Could be. Edward.
Well, it changes. I mean, it's like asking you which medium do you like, movies or television or the theater. It depends on the script and the people you're working with and the relationship you have with the director. Some directors strike sparks in a creative, happy way. Some directors strike sparks in an angry way, and you fight, but you hope in the back of your mind that he has a goal in mind. He's not just exercising his ego and wanting to enforce his will on this production because he thinks he's smarter than you are, or vice versa, or the actor thinks he knows more. Somewhere you're working together on some common idea, and there's some of it, when you start out, you don't really know where you're going to end up. And you have to have confidence that the director will at least give you a safety net, that you have a few commonly agreed principles or ideas about the play that will survive your exploration. And that's the kind of director I like to work with. I mean, that will
I'd like to ask you, you're all so gifted and you're all fortunately working today in plays. Are you finding anything that in what you're doing that you want to be able to push it a little bit further, that you want to move whatever the part that you're doing? Do you want to be able to find some other meaning in what it is that you're saying?
In the role we're
in the role
currently
that
doing?
you're doing now, that you're doing night after night and day after day. Do you feel something that maybe I've not gotten all of it, maybe I could get a
That's
little
fairly
bit more
common
out
to all
of
of
it?
us.
Do you do that at all?
I think that happens almost automatically. I think there's a searching all the time for something else, for something new, something different, something richer. It's the great privilege that we have of doing what we do. It's like, you know, we talk about doing plays, acting. You know, we play parts. You know, it's in a sense there's a sense of game. There's a sense of it being a game, a sense of it being fun, and that it's, you know, we all, in a sort of metaphorical sense, we all kind of like hold hands and dive in every night. And if you happen to be in a show that you enjoy, that you're enjoying the people you're working with, that couple of hours every night can be incredibly exciting, because and if you feel safe enough and, you know, comfortable enough to keep trying, I think it's I don't think I've ever worked with anyone who is happy to.
How much
just
does
keep
the
it
audience
absolutely-
contribute to that? Do you, if you haven't gotten the same reaction that you expected each time from the
Sometimes they're
audience?
helpful, and sometimes they're an actual hindrance. I mean, if you get coughers, and if they're loggy, and if they're this, and then you have to work very hard. We've all known, you know, about it's like pushing rocks up the hill some nights. And some nights the audience is like that, and they're ahead of you, and they pull you, and it's great.
It is a different experience. Sorry, that's the amazing thing about theatre. I mean, I have a horror of this expression, you know, when people talk about we're freezing the show now, and you think, I'm freezing the show? What does that mean? This is something living and breathing. Oh, when they talk about, you know, we're not going to change it anymore, we're just going to, this is the show, this is how it will be seen.
Every night.
And you think, well, if only, I've done some nights when I thought, that's it, I'd love that to be seen every night. But the truth is the next night, it might not be as good, and it's completely ephemeral, that little percentage that is the difference between something that's good and something that's magic is not something that you can count on every night. And I think all good actors, they're constantly re-exploring, finding things to start your imagination, to keep it fresh.
Is it tougher in musicals, if I can ask a question, you guys?
I think it is, because I'm not actually used to musicals. I haven't spent a lot of time in musical theater, and what they were going around saying the show is fixed now, and that was my reaction. This is horror. What are you talking about? I think Natasha is onto something, which is actors often say, the audience probably doesn't notice this, but the part that the audience doesn't notice actually tends to be the really precious part to you, because that is the tiny little bit that you get to change every night, that you get to explore and try to improve.
So it's also keeping it fresh, because there must be a challenge to the actor. That
Especially
it
in
doesn't
a
become
long run.
in a long run. How do you keep it fresh?
Would you sing a song differently one night to the next, in terms of, or is it more to do with an attitude towards the song?
Yes, both questions. It comes out differently, I think, especially once we get into long runs. The analogy I've kind of used is when you're starting out with, I think, any show or anything that you're doing, is you're standing at the shore of this great body of water, and first you kind of stick your toe in, you test the water, and then you kind of take your shoes off and lift up your pants and go wading in, and you keep going in deeper, and after a while you think, okay, I don't want to touch bottom anymore. I'm going to go out there and see what happens. And you go out there and for a little bit, and you come back because it's a little scary, because you don't know, something might come up from underneath and pull you down. And after a while, you get very, very comfortable out there, and I think that's where you start discovering the magic and the joy of it. And what happens, I think, a lot of times, because the company that I'm in, we've discussed this quite a bit, is the difference between what we consider a really great show and what we consider, oh, that was an awful show, worst show. Peter Friedman, who plays Tonta during our bows a lot of times, that's kind of one of the few exchanges we have in the show, and when we come out, we kind of say, good show or not, and I know when he does this, that means, oh, awful, I was just awful tonight, and then he'll go out and get this huge, gigantic hand, and everybody loves him, and you don't understand that. But I think what happens is, when you start doing a role for such a long time, you start focusing in on a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller level until it gets to the place that's what is an excellent performance, I think, to each one of us, is on such a subtle level that the audience, you forget the big picture and that the audience is taking in the whole thing and the whole show and the whole gestalt of the thing. And you kind of have to keep reminding yourself, I think, that it's not about this little tiny pause that wasn't exactly where it should have been. And it's a constant exploration, I think, of that. But that's what is fun about the theater. It's always evolving. And
But you
that's
can
what
do that in a musical as well as a...
well, I'm very fortunate to have a musical that there's great material, and it's a great actor's role and great actor's songs. So some shows don't lend themselves to that. Some shows are more about the pure entertainment of it, and I guess you appreciate it from another, Crazy for You, for instance, which is not, you don't go deep into the acting, but you can sure explore the bits and what makes timing work, and there are other things to explore, but I've been very fortunate to get some nice meaty acting roles also.
In a big
Brings
theater
you
like
to
your
this,
2000,
which is
sorry.
Everything that you've done, that I've watched you, and all through the years have brought you to this point, and that you're able to tell us so very clearly what theater is. You've given us the whole picture of it.
Thank you.
Really,
I
it's
hope it
wonderful.
continues.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Hope I don't have the answer. It's one of those answers you're always looking for.
We were
If you
talking.
had, it wouldn't be theater.
Yeah.
We were speaking before about audience reaction and your interpretation and your feeling about the audience. Now, you've all acted here and in London or in Canada, outside of out of New York. How do you find, or do you find, the audiences different in London than they are here, theater audiences, reacting to a role that you're playing? Are the audiences different in Canada or
Art would
London?
be the first thing that you would talk
Well,
about.
I didn't do the play in
No,
London,
but I
so
know you worked in Canada.
yeah,
Worked there.
My general impression, I could be completely wrong, and this is totally subjective. So don't take this, to have any value at all. But my feeling is that American audiences seem to be, generally speaking, much quicker to let you know how they're feeling about what you're doing than English audiences. In my experience in America, audiences, if they love what you're doing, they really let you know. They really let you know. And if they don't like what you're doing, they let you know that too. Whereas in London, for instance, very often you'll get this kind of rather polite sort of reaction. And you're not quite sure, whether it's happened that night or not. I mean, we've had evenings here that the difference in the audience reaction, not just at the end at the applause, not just that at the bows, but also during the show. It's been like chalk and cheese. I mean, there's a moment in the play just before I come on. There's about 3 or 4 minutes before I make my first entrance, and I'm backstage listening to what's going on. There are two lovely scenes going on before I go on. And I'm standing in the wings with the stage manager. And before I go on, we both always look to each other. We would say, screamers. They're either screamers or they're murmurs. And our audiences are either like just screaming with pleasure, or they're being very kind of, and it's that kind of a difference. And that, when I first experienced that, when I first worked in the States, it knocked my socks off, because I was amazed. I mean, I find it delightful. But that's been my experience.
Well, Jimmy, you could certainly tell us about that, coming back from doing Oliver in London, working here in New York, and then working over there.
No, I just repeat what you say.
Right.
They do in England say, "Oh, damn good show." Very good. Wonderful. No, I'm exaggerating, but I do find that the audiences in England seem to be copying the Americans. I think the audiences are getting better in England. When they're enthusiastic, they're very enthusiastic now. They may not have been a few years ago, but we had so much to choose from a few years ago. I love the American audience. I love the English audiences. I haven't played anywhere else, so I'm not an expert on other than English or American. But both of them, in my opinion, are very enthusiastic if the material's good. Give them bad material and they'll boo you off the stage, and they're entitled to.
I think the British audiences, though, are less influenced by the critics over here. I think American audiences will read a review, and then if the review is a good review, fine, then they'll go and buy a ticket to a show. I think the British audiences are more adventurous. They're more curious about something new, and it sort of makes me sad in my profession that we don't have as many new plays starting here in America as you do in London. And also, I think Americans now really have, theater goers here, have a love affair with the British theater. And you certainly brought over some wonderful, wonderful plays, and the challenging plays also from the Royal Court. And
well,
from,
theatre people in England lament the fact that most of the good writing's coming from Ireland. You know,
Ireland,
that,
right.
But it's the grass is always greener, you know, someplace.
But in London, there's a slightly different structure in as much as we have audiences read a lot more review. They read a lot more critics. We've got like 5, 6,
One
7.
critic can't sink a ship.
We've got 7 or 8 actually major critics.
Do they all come on the same night?
Yeah, more or less.
But are their reviews all published the next day? Because most people only buy one paper a day.
Yeah, no, they'll all come out the same day, apart from like the weeklies and the monthlies. But there's a much wider range of reviewers. Yeah. There isn't just like one voice. And also, England's always been blessed, certainly since the end of since the Second World War. It's changing now, but up until recently, we had a very well subsidized repertory and fringe circuit where there was a lot of public money put into areas where new writers, new plays, new theatre companies were encouraged to experiment and sort of spread their field of activity, and it was supported by a lot of public money, and that's created, I think, a kind of a sensibility about new work, new writers in particular, which we're now reaping the benefits of. I mean, people like Martin McDonough, Jess Butterworth, I mean, all these new young writers that are coming out of Ireland and England are the result of 25 years of a serious financial commitment on the part of the British government to provide money, so those shoots can be nurtured.
You're all reaping the benefit of it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's
But
unfortunate.
there's time in England for word of mouth to get around. It isn't just, as you said, that one paper. There's enough time that they can, with the Sunday papers and the various papers that are there, that you can hear what people are saying about it and use their opinion for it. Here,
build an audience.
It's too fast.
Well, our as Blythe certainly knows through the Williamstown Theatre, our new work is coming from regional theatres and from workshops that are not in New York, because even off-Broadway today has become very, very expensive and difficult to start a new play. So, unfortunately, we always end up looking for plays that already have the affirmation of success attached to them. So if audience will go and buy a ticket before the play even opens, and where does that come from? That comes from England by word of mouth. And to get back anyway to reviews, I want to ask you, do you all read your reviews, and how do they affect you? And if by chance, this is a doubleheader, a doubleheader, if by chance you happen to get an excellent review, and shall I say the rest of the cast doesn't get as positive a review, how do you handle that? And does it affect the performance?
I've tried many ways of dealing with reviews. Not reading them all. Yes, yes. Not reading them. Reading them after the show was over, and I gave up. I read them. A review is never good enough, because you want to be the next Barrymore. So, yeah, he was wonderful in the part. Wonderful. Why wasn't I superb? Why wasn't I this? Or a review is wounding and painful, and John Simon will say, well, he really can't play an Englishman. It's one of the few things I know I can do rather well. And he just picks something, well, Herrmann is not very English in this part. So they hurt. So you just read him and get on with it. I mean, if you know that he doesn't like the rest of the cast, or if you were singled out as being bad, and everybody else in the cast is good, you still depend on your coworkers to keep you afloat, and you go back to the play. Just keep doing the play, and to hell with these people. We can't say to hell with them altogether because they affect our livelihood. But ultimately, you have to have enough strength of mind and character to just throw them off. If he or she is one person, but it doesn't matter that they've seen a lot of plays. Maybe they've made a lot of mistakes, but their point of view is crap. So you just have to dismiss it. Get on with it.
There's an old saying I remember hearing once, and this kind of stuck in my head, especially with reviews. I find it very nice. Is if one person calls thee an ass, ignore it. If two people call thee an ass, consider it. If three people call thee an ass, get thee a saddle. And I kind of look at reviews in the same way. If one person says something and everybody else is saying other things, but if enough people say something, you do have to, I think, because we're all, I think, always trying to grow and do what we can, and we don't a lot of times get a one-on-one relationship with an audience, except for what you hear at the end of the show or the laughs that you get. And sometimes you need to consider what
critics
people
have
are
changed,
saying.
though. It used to be Simon, Callow's book about Charles Laughton, the wonderful book on acting. He traced Laughton's career through the 20s and 30s, and consistently went back to good reviewers. And is it Agate on the Times in the 20s and 30s? What a reviewer! Brilliant. He was interested in bringing an actor along and saw how he developed. He didn't want to destroy him. He said, well, no, this performance, he's wasting himself because he is a great actor, but you should do this, this, this. And now he's flowering. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. And reviewers simply don't have that idea that they contribute to the health and life of this art form of ours. They think that it's going to last forever.
You've been so responsive to all of our questions here, and there are still so many that haven't been answered, but we're going to try and have you answer a few of them from our audience here today. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi, my name is Sabrina Musi. I was wondering, as a student who is also studying drama, do you feel it's more important, whoever wants to answer this, do you feel it's more important to receive a full education in school for theater as opposed to the experience?
Who's going to answer that?
Well, we wanted my daughter very much to go to college. My daughter's Gwyneth Paltrow, who's having a very splashy career at the moment. We wanted her to go to college, and I was heartbroken when she pulled out. But when I started out, my father insisted I go to college. You have to start, to have a complete education. But now the business is so geared to some of the greatest roles are the younger roles. So when she decided to do that and embark on her career, I thought, well, I guess it was the right time because there were so many beautiful roles at that age. And that's changed, I think, from the time when I started. It was very different. You had the classical training. But it's important to work, I think, as much. Hello.
Hi, my name's Amy. This is for Natasha. What has been your most influential role?
Influential in what way?
Like, influenced you?
Influenced me, a part that I've played. Well, I think they're just women that I've really, really connected with on some level. I don't know, women who tend to be going through some terrible time and somehow in the gutter or some way or another, I don't know. Anna Christie, playing Sally Bowles, Nina and the Seagull, Catherine in Suddenly Last Summer. Those spring to mind.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leah Marie Angelini. This is for anyone who wants to answer it. Does talent and ambition matter anymore in theater when you're going on auditions?
Does talent and
ambition matter when you're out auditioning?
Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps you afloat. I mean, yeah, I would say you have to have ambition to get up and make a fool of yourself and have someone judge you. It's scary as hell. And with the lights in your eyes, and thank you, next, and you walk out feeling like a rag. And talent, yeah, you should have it, or you're probably not going to make a living in the business, but you should be able to at least use it and have enough control of yourself to bring it to bear on an audition. It's, yeah, I would say, pretty necessary to have.
Hi, I'm Michelle Shingola. I addressed my question to John Vickery. What is your definition of being a successful actor?
Oh dear. I think, as Alfred said, making a living, and then there are the rewards. I think for me are mostly internal. I sort of quaked at the question about success earlier because I feel like I've had many opportunities and squandered them all because I think most of the rewards are internal.
I'm going to draw this to a close now, and just so I have time to thank each and every one of you that are participating in today's seminar on working in the theater. These are coming to you from the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, and today's seminar is on performance. And I don't know when we've had such an extraordinary panel as we have today. Ed Herrmann in Deep Blue Sea, and Alfred Molina in art, Blythe Danner in Deep Blue Sea, John Vickery in Lion King, and I'm going to skip our moderators and come back to you, Natasha Richardson in Cabaret, and Brian Stokes Miller in oh, there you are. That's what I'm talking about. In Ragtime. And our moderators have just been wonderful. Jim Dale, who has been actor, comedian, writer, and today moderator extraordinaire. And Dasha Epstein, who is a member of the Board of Directors of the American Theater Wing, most knowledgeable. And I thank you all so much for being here. Thank you.